Case of Baylor, this is systemic. And if the NCAA can't do anything, fearing the same fate they suffered, once having to settle with Penn State for the sanctions they handed down, fine. That ain't even necessary any longer. All that needs to be done is for every parent in the United States of America to stand up, speak loudly, collectively, and say, quote, there's no way in hell my daughter is ever going to Baylor. In the end, that's death in and of itself.
And that was Stephen A. earlier this month saying he wouldn't want his daughter attending Baylor University after all the sexual assault scandals that have happened in recent years. Now the Lady Bears basketball head coach, Kim Mulkey, is catching some heat after some comments she made over the weekend regarding people's view of the school. Take a listen.
If somebody confirms you and they ever say, I will never come back to the world and not come back in the face. I'm tired of people talking on it on a national scale that don't know what they're talking about. If they didn't sit in those meetings and they weren't a part of the investigation, you're repeating things that you've heard. It's over. It's done. And this is a great institution, and I would send my daughter here, and I'd pay for anybody else's daughter to come here. I work here every day. I'm in the know, and I'm tired of hearing it.
Mulkey apologized to ESPNW saying this: I hate that I used the remark about punching them in the face. That was not literal. I was trying to make a point to be firm in what you are saying back at them. I'm not a violent person. I apologize for the very poor choice of words. My point was, please don't paint with a broad brush the women at Baylor. I didn't think about what I was going to say. I looked at my players and the little girls and the women who are cheering for them, and I spoke with a lot of emotion. Not only do I sympathize with the victims, I'm angry about the way the victims were treated at the university. It is horrible, horrible. Any time someone does not take care of a victim, even one sexual assault, is too many. Nobody is dismissing what happened here. I want us to get to the bottom of it. Stephen A., you are obviously very strong on this subject, and I want your reaction to Kim Mulkey's comments.
First of all, let me say this to Kim Mulkey. You can be tired about it all you want. And I'm sorry, I'm going to shove Max and Molly aside. This is Stephen A. Smith talking. I don't give a damn what you feel. It doesn't mean anything to me, because you should be ashamed of yourself for taking the position. The position that I stood right here on this show and addressed was about women being sexually assaulted, raped, and abused on a campus that employs you. You're a woman and you have a problem with me saying this? Really? Did the Wall Street Journal, were they inaccurate with what they reported? Because I highlighted that. Was 60 Minutes Sports, were they inaccurate with what they highlighted? I pointed that out. The bevy of cases that have been placed against individuals who have played at Baylor University are so alarming. I repeat, I believe y'all deserve the death penalty. As far as I'm concerned, you're damn near as bad as Jerry Sandusky. I think a legitimate argument could be made when you consider some of the things that have been reported about Baylor University. And it alarms me. You can go to ESPNW all you want to after you said what you said, but I want to take into account what originally came out of your mouth. We are talking about violence against women. Last time I checked, I'm a man. I'm a man. And I'm speaking about violence against women. And a woman would stand up and not only decry what I said, because I don't care what anybody said, that remark was directed at me, okay? Because we know what I said with the final take, and we know they will watch it because the emails and the calls into my radio show and all of this other stuff came forward thereafter. This is a lady who is a leader of a program. I'm sorry, Max Kellerman, correct me if I'm wrong. Did I say anything about the women at Baylor? Other than you've been victimized.
No.
What did I say? So what are you talking about? The women here speaking against the women of this program. Nobody spoke against the women. Nobody spoke against the women. We were coming to the defense of women. There's a head coach that is gone. There was an athletic director and an administrator, that's gone. The president of the university was reassigned. I'm sorry, we're making this up. In what world? So when you consider, Kim Mulkey, what you're saying on behalf of the university, forgive us if we look at you with the proverbial eye raising or eyebrow raising or what have you. We're looking at you and saying, what in God's name are you talking about? Make up your mind. You are a lady. You are a woman. You are grown. You are a leader of a program. You care about these women just as much, if not more, than most of us. So how could you possibly just dismiss it by coming to the defense of the university? Could it be because you're getting paid by them? I don't know. I can't say something like that. But your words were completely and totally uncalled for. And oh, by the way, speaking of those words, we're speaking against violence, and you're encouraging people to punch somebody in the face. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess that's okay. Please, go someplace with that.
I think what she was responding to was your call to not send our daughters to that institution.
Sure.
And as a woman employed by the institution and proud of the institution, obviously in other respects, clearly not in this respect, couldn't be, who could be proud of it in that respect, in other respects, is standing up for the institution. Because that's the first thing. And it was an emotional response and she used this very, hopefully imprecise language. You hope that the language she used was imprecise and was just coming from an emotional place, which she basically copped to after the fact. So that addresses the kind of word choice. And it's important when you are articulating a position like that, if you or she, to be specific in your word choice. I mean, everyone in this business gets into trouble occasionally for language that's not specific enough, especially dealing with controversial topics. And I would accept her explanation that she was simply emotional about it and angry about it and didn't really mean it literally. I would hope she didn't mean it literally, because the word choice is important. The specificity of the language is important. But I think generally her reaction was to your claim that people should not send their daughters to that institution, and based on what came out, I think your claim is or your proposal is a legitimate one that obviously people at that institution are taking seriously.
I'm going to change the culture. It was irresponsible and it was insensitive in terms of her having that platform and saying it there. And the fact to say that it's over. How can you say it's over? Well, for these victims, it's never going to be over.
You also don't need to be in the meetings to be able to comment.
I will say this. If anybody has a problem with what I say, they're going to have a real problem with me on this one. You're talking to a father of daughters. I got 4 older sisters. I got 9 nieces. I got the most wonderful mother in the world. Let me be very, very clear. This hits home. I meant exactly what I said. Daughters, nieces, anybody. I don't want any female in my family thinking about going to Baylor. Not with what we've heard, but it ain't because of the women. It's because the women are being victimized. We're talking about, listen, a head coach, an athletic administrator, and a president have lost their job. There is information that lends itself towards them being dismissive against victims, ignoring their pleas, ignoring their concerns, ignoring what they reported. And you are the head of a program at Baylor, and you would literally publicly state.
Yeah, you want to take a position, get involved in changing the culture.
There are 2 different issues here. On the one hand, there's the issue that you're taking exception to, which is her standing up for the institution at all, given what just went on. I understand if you're employed by the institution, you have roots there. I understand the impulse to stand up for it in spite of what's going on. And then the other thing is, are you so over the top about it that you actually use language that incites violence or intends to? That's a separate issue. And obviously, I think everyone can agree that that was a mistake on her part.
Yeah, and I think maybe she should do her homework on what actually went down.
And again, nobody's talking about the women in a negative fashion. Y'all are the victims. It would have been a little bit more tolerable if it came from a man. The fact that a woman who heads the program is literally speaking in that fashion, she almost seems as insensitive to what happened there as the men were accused of being.
On that note, we will move on. The future of Marvin Lewis is in question, but do the guys think he should remain in Cincy? And how about them Cowboys? Jerry and Jimmy back at it again. But what does this say about Jerry Jones and America's team? We'll discuss.
Again, too much scrutiny. It's not good.
We got to move on here. Speaking of scrutiny, the biggest trade of the NBA trade deadline hasn't exactly been working out for the Pelicans. DeMarcus Cousins and his new squad are 0-3 since he joined New Orleans. Sunday night, the Pelicans lost to the Thunder, and to make matters worse, Cousins received his 18th technical of the season less than a minute into the game. He will now have to serve a 1-game suspension. Here's Cousins after the game.
I don't feel like I did anything wrong to receive it, so hopefully the league handles it the right way, and hopefully I get the benefit of the doubt. We got to work on us right now. We got to figure this thing out in house, and that should be the main goal at this moment, which is figuring out what's best for the team, figuring out what's the best way for us to play together.
All right, Stephen A., I know this trade just happened, but what's wrong with the Pelicans?
They're not good enough. They don't have anybody other than the 2 players that they have. Drew Holiday is a solid player, but he's not a superstar point guard. Anthony Davis is an absolute stud. DeMarcus Cousins is a stud offensively. Defensively, he's not intimidating anybody. He's not a shot blocker. He's not a rim stopper. That's not who he is. You combine that with the fact that Alvin Gentry still has a lot to prove as a head coach in this game. Remember, I highlighted last week, as much as I like and respect Alvin Gentry, because he does know basketball, he's been a head coach for 14 seasons in this league. He's had 2 winning seasons. 2. The bottom line is you can't escape that reality. And so we're going to learn a lot about their maturation with one another, but we're also going to learn a lot, even in this short period of time, even with a hellacious schedule, because they had Oklahoma City and Dallas and Houston, these 3 games that they lost. They got San Antonio coming up, I think Utah down the road, Detroit, etc. We're going to find out not just what they're made of, we're going to find out what Alvin Gentry's made of.
This one ain't that hard. Pelicans are no good. I mean, they're not good. They're Anthony Davis and a collection of parts that aren't good enough. Holiday's nice. As you said, he's solid. He's not, the idea that he's supposed to be part of a big 3, stop. He's okay. They're not a good team that just added a major piece who, by the way, essentially plays the same position. They do some things differently that their best player already plays. So anytime you add a huge piece midstream, you have to integrate it, particularly when there's some redundancy. You have to figure out high-usage players, how that's going to work, and the team isn't very good to begin with. The questions about Boogie Cousins being a winning or losing player under any circumstances will be answered partially as time goes on. But the idea that these two couldn't play together, I think, is far-fetched. I think that over time, this team will be better, obviously, for the trade of an extremely talented, valuable piece in Boogie Cousins. And if you think back to Kevin Durant on the Golden State Warriors and how that looked, on a well-oiled machine, you added a Durant who wasn't redundant. Look how they looked against San Antonio early in the season. Terrible.
It is entirely too early to bang the gavel and say this is the way it's going to be, but it's also entirely untrue to not look at this and pass judgment that the Pelicans are worse with DeMarcus Cousins. Right now, they are worse than the team they fielded before they had DeMarcus Cousins by every statistical measure, plus minus with those two on the floor. Offensive rating, they are 7 points, I think it's 7 points worse with these two playing together than they were before the trade. Defense, by the way, also measurably worse. Now, is that because they have 3 guys around them that just simply cannot play, or is it because guys play worse with DeMarcus Cousins or 2 towers like this? For more than 3 games, we'll answer that question. But you can't beat around the bush. Right now, DeMarcus Cousins' addition to the Pelicans has made that team worse.
As Kevin Durant made the Warriors worse early on.
Well, listen, you got 2 guys that command 25 shots a game and are used to being the number 1 option. That's why I bring up Alvin Gentry. Coaching has something to do with it. And here's how you know. Ask any aspiring head coach out there. Excuse me, we got a head coaching opening. And, 2 guys you got to work with is Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins. Tell me who ain't going to want that job. And that's how you know. What I'm saying to you is this. Don't get me wrong. I'm not telling you that DeMarcus Cousins can't be a headache. I'm not trying to gloss over some of the distractions that he created. But you don't teach what he brings. And a lot of times I've often said this, and I'll leave it to y'all to answer this question before we go. I've often said this. You don't play, meaning you're a coach. You don't play. Well, what the hell is it that you do? Do you really think as a head coach, particularly in this day and age, with 12 brands on a particular team, depending on which team you're coaching, do you really think that you get to just highlight X's and O's? No. You got to motivate. You got to cajole. You got to massage. You got to do a whole bunch of things because that's what separates the guys who can be in the league as a coach and the guys that can't. You got to do that with the DeMarcus Cousins of the world, too.
The question with Boogie Cousins is not only his personality in the locker room. It's, does he have the kind of game that is conducive to winning in the modern NBA?
Yes.
For his position. You know what he does best? Pass the ball. Like, people don't understand. DeMarcus Cousins is a brilliant player who needs to be in the right situation and coached up right with strong personalities around him in leadership roles. It remains to be seen whether or not that's the Pelicans. But everything he does on the floor is conducive to winning in the modern NBA.
Right now, we haven't even gotten to those problems you just enunciated about DeMarcus Cousins. We're not even at motivational problems. We're not even at behavioral problems. We're at X's and O problems. We're at no space on the floor problems. We're at Alvin Gentry problems. Wait till the behavioral problems come on.
Okay.
They're going to come.
Yeah, they're going to come. But you can gloss over it if you have the coaching with that talent.
It's veteran leadership.
Thank you for being
You
with
bet.
us.
Thanks for having me.
Speaking of beef, we got one that we haven't discussed yet, and we're not talking about Nicki Minaj and Remy Ma. The feud between Shaquille O'Neal and JaVale McGee is over, and you won't believe who ended it. That's next.
Case of Baylor, this is systemic. And if the NCAA can't do anything, fearing the same fate they suffered once having to settle with Penn State for the sanctions they handed down, fine. That ain't even necessary any longer. All that needs to be done is for every parent in the United States of America to stand up, speak loudly, collectively, and say, quote, there's no way in hell my daughter is ever going to Baylor. In the end, that's death in and of itself.
And that was Stephen A. earlier this month saying he wouldn't want his daughter attending Baylor University after all the sexual assault scandals that have happened in recent years. Now the Lady Bears basketball head coach Kim Mulkey is catching some heat after some comments she made over the weekend regarding people's view of the school. Take a listen.
If somebody is around you and they ever say, I will never see my baby, I'm not going to lie in your face. These kids are older than me, and I work, and when I go to school here, and it's the damn best. I'm tired of people talking on it on a national scale that don't know what they're talking about. If they didn't sit in those meetings and they weren't a part of the investigation, you're repeating things that you've heard. It's over.